I jotted down a couple stuff. We'll see what we get through. First shaila is, I got this last night. It's an interesting shaila. Someone called me up and he said that he has grape juice in his house, and his non-Jewish cleaning lady moved the grape juice. Okay, so what's the problem? So he said, it says on the grape juice non-mevushal. So is it a problem? So let me explain like this. Now, I'm not going to get involved. There is a separate shaila, but that's not for now, of what type of movement, right? The basic overall concept is like this. The concept is that Chazal Assorted that if a non-Jew is not allowed to touch non-mevushal wine. Now, the reason for this is uncooked wine they're not allowed to touch is because Chazal were afraid of intermarriage and idolatry, and therefore they just said, let's just separate it. Meaning, intermarriage, because the concern is you start drinking with someone that's not Jewish, and then you hit it off, and then they stay not Jewish, and then it's a problem. Or idolatry. The wine was used for idolatry. So, okay. Now, there's a separate shaila of what type of touching is a problem. They just moved it to the fridge. I'm not getting involved with that. I just want to clarify one point. Chazal only forbade non-mevushal wine, which means wine that's not cooked. Once wine is mevushal, once it's cooked, it's fine. Now, what's the difference? So it's very practical. Wine that was cooked was not common in the times of Chazal. They didn't drink cooked wine. All wine that was like good and drinkable was non-mevushal. They never served mevushal wine. It was unheard of. Even nowadays, chashuva wine connoisseurs are not going to have Moscato d'Asti. You know what I mean? Wine, it was more chashuv. So when Chazal forbade it, they did the more common application. The more common application was non-mevushal. So here's the thing. What's the definition of mevushal? What defines cooked? So you say, well, cooked is 212, right? Boiled, right? That's cooked. So that's the sheet of Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Elyashiv. And therefore, if wine or grape juice is not brought to 212, it is non-mevushal and it's an issue. Rav Moshe Feinstein disagrees. Rav Moshe Feinstein feels that the definition of cooked is not 212. The definition of cooked is cooked in halacha. Now, when it comes to the laws of Shabbos, right? If I take a cup of water and I heat it up on Shabbos, do I have to get it to 212 to break Shabbos? No. I have to get it to what's called Yad Soledesbo. Yad Soledesbo is a shaila. Some say it's 110, 120, 125 according to Rav Shlomo Zalman. 180 is for sure Yad Soledes. Yad Soledes means it's hot enough that a person will pull his hand back. That's considered cooked when it comes to the laws of Shabbos. Rav Moshe Feinstein's opinion is that when it comes to cooking, all the Torah, that's the definition of cooking. Now, why is this relevant? Pasteurization, Louis Pasteur, pasteurization means that Louis Pasteur figured out that if you heat a liquid at a low simmer of about 165 to 180, over a long period of time, it will kill all the pathogens and it'll kill all the bacteria without having to boil it. Grape juice is pasteurized. All grape juice is pasteurized because if it wasn't pasteurized, it would turn into wine. In the times of the Gemara, before pasteurization, grape juice was just something you could drink for 2 months and then it turned into wine. The fact that you can go to the store and buy grape juice year round, it's pasteurized. It has to be pasteurized unless I'm completely, I didn't go to college, but unless I'm completely wrong on this one, it has to be pasteurized, which means all grape juice is mevushal according to Rav Moshe Feinstein. Now, the reason why some hechsherim will say non-mevushal is because they're being strict by Rav Shlomo Zalman's opinion and Rav Elyashiv's opinion. But according to Rav Moshe, it's fully cooked. Therefore, no grape juice will ever be an issue. Now, the reason why this is very relevant and very good to know is because if you are having Kiddush on Friday night and there's someone at your table who's either not Jewish or not observant, we do know there's a concept that doesn't always apply depending on how they went off the derech and did they know about it, tinik shenishba, all that whole to do. But in general, we do not like to have wine that is not cooked when someone that's not religious is at the table. So it's always a good idea, have mevushal wine. So a lot of times people will not think, they'll just buy grape juice, not realizing it. The answer is all grape juice is fine according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, so therefore there is no problem. And although it might say on certain hechsherim, non-mevushal, that is more of the Hasidisha hechsherim, and they're not following the view of Rav Moshe Feinstein, but this is definitely something that you could follow. You could definitely follow Rav Moshe Feinstein for sure. So that's that halach. I just wanted to clarify that point. So grape juice will be fine under all circumstances. again, that's a great question, which is why didn't they, if the whole point is to avoid socializing, they should outlaw beer. The answer is, there is some regulations of going to a bar and drinking. There is a siman in Shulchan Aruch, but to answer your question directly, Chazal forbade the more common drink. Beer was not common in the times of the Gemara. They drank wine. That was the drink. They drink wine more than they drink water. So while date beer was a thing, it was obscure. It wasn't like it is today. Listen, just agav, I'll take, there's a separate shiur, right? There's a separate shiur that, I don't know if you ever noticed. We spoke about this once, I don't know, at some point. It's there's a concept that you're really supposed to make kiddush on Shabbos day, Friday night also, but you're supposed to make kiddush Shabbos day on wine or grape juice. Right? That's really what it's preferred. So there's a shaila. People sometimes make grape juice, make kiddush on beer, on schnapps, on vodka, tequila, all these things. So what's the heter for that? So the truth is, according to the Rambam and according to the Balatanya, according to many Rishonim, I'm sorry, not the Rambam, according to many Rishonim, it's not okay. You're supposed to make it on wine. The Shulchan Aruch writes the only time you make kiddush on non-wine is when it's called Chamar Medina, which he says is when there's no wine available. Meaning, but nowadays where there's wine and grape juice available, you should make it on wine and grape juice, and that's why if you go to a kiddush and there's a rabbi there, 99% of the time they're going to be making kiddush on wine and grape juice, and it's not just because they don't want to make they don't want to drink vodka. It's because that's the proper thing to do. So what's the heter that many people will make kiddush on non-wine? The reason is because the Rambam defines, and Bir Halacha brings it down, that some define Chamar Medina is not that there's no wine available, but that the drink is more common than wine. So in the times of the Gemara, that was unheard of. But nowadays, people statistically probably drink more alcoholic beverage. That's beers, probably drink much more than wine. So for that argument, and schnapps as well, and whatever you call all these alcohols. So that could be the argument. My point is, to answer your question directly, beer was not very common. Chazal only outlawed what was common at the time. And this goes back to what I spoke about Friday night. That Rav Moshe forbade all Shabbos clocks, right? And he said, if timers existed in the times of the Gemara, they would have outlawed it. And therefore we should outlaw it now. Rav Ovadia Yosef responds, we don't do that. We don't go into what would have been, because Rav Ovadia says, if we were to do that, then cooked wine would be the same as non-mevushal wine, because nowadays they're as common. Yeah, all these things. You go with what was at the times of Chazal. Chazal forbade the more common application. The common application was non-cooked wine. Not beer, not other things. That's what they forbade. And then we're not going to add to it. We're just going to we're going to keep our head down and just do the job. All right? Now, shaila number 2 is a little more lengthy and it's detailed. So it would be conceptually good for people to write this down, but just listen. This is a concept. I just want to sort of bring about the concept, and I'll tell you some of the details of it. Because a lot of people don't even know that this is a thing. When you go to shul, and you come to Shachris is 7 o'clock. Over here it's 7 o'clock. If you show up here at 7:08 or 7:10, but not just here, the average shul, if you show up at 7:10, they're up to Yishtabach. Okay. Now, the question is you have 2 choices now. And I'll talk about Mincha and Maariv in a second. But Shachris, you're like, okay, I'm just daven. Here's the deal. The most important thing is to start Shemoneh Esrei with the minyan. The whole purpose of davening with the minyan is to start Shemoneh Esrei, Amidah, with the minyan. To go to shul and to daven at your own pace, and then by the time you get up to Shemoneh Esrei, they're already finished davening, you missed out on Tevilah B'tzibbur. The objective is to daven Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur. Now, because of this, while it is never good to skip, skipping is not a good idea, just in general, as the Beis Yosef was told by a malach. He used to have a chavrusa with an angel. And the malach told the Beis Yosef that skipping around during davening, he says, is mahapich tzinoris. It's like taking pipes, and you start switching. You pipe under the toilet, and you put it into the sink, and it messes up stuff. It's not very good. It's not good for your house. It's not good for davening. And you start skipping stuff. It's not good. That being said, while it is not good to skip, you have to skip in order to get to daven with the minyan. But you can't skip everything, right? You can't just show up and skip everything and just say, I'm just going to say Shema. Like, that's not enough. So what could I skip? What should I skip in order to get to the minyan during Shachris? I'll run through Shachris, I'll run through Mincha and Maariv. Okay, so Shachris, here's the deal. These are the things you have to say And if you need to skip this also, you're just not davening with a minyan today, right? You cannot skip everything. Here's what you have to say. Besides for putting on your tefillin, and you say brachas in the morning. I'm talking about from Hodu until Shemoneh Esrei. Here's what you have to say. Baruch She'amar, you have to say. Cannot skip that. Yishtabach, you have to say. Cannot skip that. Now, Svardim will say that's all you need to say. According to Svardim, I'll tell you Svardi approach, and I'll tell you the Ashkenazi approach. Svardi approach is Baruch She'amar, at least according to Ravadia, not the Or L'Tzion, but according to Ravadia. Baruch She'amar, just say Baruch She'amar, just say Yishtabach, and then say it straight. There is no skipping after Yishtabach under any circumstance. The stuff after Yishtabach till Shemoneh Esrei, there is no skipping. If you need to skip in order to make daven with the minyan, then you're just going to not daven with the minyan today, and that's fine. But Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, that is the minimum for Svardim. Okay? Ashkenazim add one more thing. Ashkenazim feel you have to say Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, and Yishtabach. You could skip everything else. So if I'm running late, here's what I should do. And I realize, I sort of make this mental math. If I say these three, if I skip, I'll be able to catch up. Because again, if even with skipping, you're not going to catch up, then there's no purpose of skipping. But you'll skip, so I get there. I'm like, okay, here's what I got to do. Skip Hoidu, out. Mizmor L'Sayda, out. I'll say Baruch She'amar, I'll say Ashrei, I'll say Yishtabach, and then I'll go straight. And now I'm caught up with them. That is the Ashkenazi psak. Svardim will skip Ashrei also. That is the bare minimum. You cannot skip more than that. Okay. Now, this is in order to start with the minyan. Now, let's say you have a little more time. Okay, so I got a little more time. I don't need to skip everything. I definitely need to skip some stuff. So here's what you do. Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, Yishtabach. On Shabbos, by the way, it's Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, Nishmas, Yishtabach. Nishmas is very, very important. That's what you say. Now, throughout the week, let's say I have a little more time. There's levels. So it's Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, Yishtabach. Boom. The last Hallelujah is the next most important thing, the fifth one. Then the third Hallelujah. Again, you got to just sort of memorize this. 5, then 3. Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, Yishtabach. Fifth Hallelujah, third Hallelujah. Then if you have time, then you'll start adding in some other things. Some say Hoidu, but that's really for Ashkenazim because they say Hoidu after Baruch She'amar. For Svardim, I would just say the other stuff. I would say the rest of the Hallelujahs, maybe fill in Az Yashir, that type of thing. But it's Baruch She'amar, Ashrei, Yishtabach. Fifth Hallelujah, third Hallelujah, the rest of the Hallelujahs. That is the order of skipping in order to make up with the tzibbur. Now, a couple things. I'm going to run through some stuff, then I'm happy to take questions. Now, once I skip, let's say I skipped all the Hallelujahs. I had to, in order to catch up, I skipped all the Hallelujahs. I finished Shemoneh Esrei. Should I say them now? So you're like, why not? So here's the deal. So, I'll tell you, I don't. The reason being is because it's an old machlokas between the Gaonim, but more modern day times, it will be Mishnah Berurah against the Aruch HaShulchan. If you skip things, should you say them after Shemoneh Esrei? The Aruch HaShulchan said no. So when I was in yeshiva, I was like, that's a good opinion, because that's skipping, and I'm into that, and I'm not going to say it. And I'm completely honest, I was 13, I was like, that sounds good, I'm good to go, I'm Aruch HaShulchan. And I've been doing it for a very long time. I don't skip very often, but practically it's a machlokas. Now let me just explain. Why would you not say it? Like, what does it hurt to say it? It's just Hallelujahs, right? I get asked that question a lot, which is just like, it's just Tehillim, right? When people ask, there's a certain day of the calendar, which people want to say Hallel. Some sects of Jews are very against saying Hallel that day. Some are very into saying Hallel that day. And the question that you always get asked, which is like, what does it hurt? It's just Tehillim. The answer is, davening, things that are being said as Tehillim, very much change when they're being said as part of davening. Meaning it depends on what your intention is. So let's say I skipped all the Hallelujahs. The Aruch HaShulchan would say, do not say them after, don't. It's not a good thing, do not say it. Mishnah Berurah says you should say it. Now why would the Aruch HaShulchan say not to say it? Because let me explain. When you say those Hallelujahs as Tehillim, as Psalms, they do certain things in Shemayim. But when you say them as part of davening, it's different, and they have a different result. And the reason why you would be against saying it is because, let me explain how davening, the formation of davening, right? Psukah de Zimra is meant to praise Hashem in order to lead to the request. That's the formation of it. It's the praise leading to the request. If after you finish Shemoneh Esrei, after you've already asked for things and said thank you, you now start saying the praise leading up to the request. In Shemayim, they're like, what is this guy doing? He's already asked. And it's like, does he not understand? Like in Shemayim, they're like, what is this? No. What's going on here? Stop saying it. Again, things that are just Tehillim change when they're being said as davening. I'll give you another example. Now, this is all by Shachris. Let's go through. So Shachris, I told you what to skip, okay? Again, whether you remember or not, whatever. It's here, you can listen to it. What about Mincha? Mincha, you don't have a lot of choice. Mincha is just Ashrei, it's Ashrei and Shemoneh Esrei. So skipping Ashrei. Here's the halacha. If you get to shul and they said Ashrei already, and they're about to start Shemoneh Esrei, start Shemoneh Esrei with them. Because the main point is to start Shemoneh Esrei with the minyan. Skip Ashrei. So should you say Ashrei afterwards? It's a machlokas. So what do? Say it, but have in mind that it's Tehillim. Do not say it as davening. Say it as Tehillim. The reason being is because for Kabbalistic reasons, we do not say Ashrei at night. Like there's a rule that a lot of people don't know about. Let's say I missed Maariv. I do 2 shachrises, right? I miss shachris, I do 2 minchas. I miss mincha, I do 2 Maarivs. So what's the process for that? Let's say I missed Maariv. I completely forgot, I went to bed, I wasn't feeling well, get to shul, I realize, oh man, I didn't daven Maariv last night. So here's what you do. You daven shachris, Shemoneh Esrei, have in mind that it's shachris. You take 3 steps back, then you know what you do? You daven a second time, having in mind that this one is a makeup for Maariv. But you know what you do in between? You say Ashrei. You miss mincha, you miss shachris, you're doing 2 minchas. You know what you do in between Shemoneh Esrei? You say Ashrei. Ashrei is always said before Shemoneh Esrei, by mincha and by makeup, except at night. We do not say Ashrei at night. So for Kabbalistic reasons, you don't say it. So what do you do if you skipped Ashrei in order to catch up with the minyan? So you say Ashrei afterwards, but have in mind that it's Tehillim. Do not say it as davening. Have in mind that it's Tehillim. So by mincha, you skip Ashrei in order to say with the tzibbur. And what about Maariv? Maariv is very interesting. A lot of people do not realize this. Maariv, if let's say you get to shul, and they're up to Shemoneh Esrei, say Shemoneh Esrei with them, skip everything. Maariv, skip everything, say Shemoneh Esrei with them, and then after Shemoneh Esrei, say the whole Maariv except for Shemoneh Esrei. So you get to shul, skip everything, just say Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur. Do you want to grab and open the door for him? Dad can't get the door. I don't know. It's pretty. There's Alman. So the point is, if you're coming late, if you're coming late to Maariv, skip everything. Skip everything if you're coming late to Maariv. Just say Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur. Skip everything. Just say Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur. Then after Shemoneh Esrei of Maariv, then say the rest of davening to do as a makeup. Now, I will say this. That's what you skip in order to make up with the tzibbur for Shachos Mincha Maariv. But let me just explain one thing. Let's say someone is davening Maariv with the minyan, and he doesn't need to skip a lot. Like I said, if you come into shul late for Maariv, and they're up to Shemoneh Esrei, just say Shemoneh Esrei with them, skip everything, and then say the rest of Maariv after Shemoneh Esrei. That's the halacha for Maariv. But let's say you're davening with the minyan, and you're like, I don't need to skip that much. Or let's say you even started with them, but you just daven super slow, and you're like, I can't make it with them if I daven at my pace. So you don't skip, but there's one thing you should skip, okay? So let me just explain a little bit. There's a rule that it's called Soimich Gula L'Tfila, which is that by Shachris, for sure by Shachris, but even Maariv, we want the bracha of Ga'al Yisrael to be said right into Shemoneh Esrei. We want no separation. Ga'al Yisrael talking about the redemption from Egypt, we want that to be the last thing you say before you start talking to Hashem. It's very important. You mention the redemption from Egypt, how Hashem saved us, and then that'll be a very good way to start your Shemoneh Esrei. Hopefully He'll save us again. That's the premise. So the Gemara goes through. There are stuff in between. So Shachris, it's pretty straight, right? Shachris, if you ever notice, the last thing we say is Baruch Atah Hashem, Ga'al Yisrael, straight to Shema. There's nothing in between. There's one line, the introduction from Shemoneh Esrei, Hashem Sefasei Tiv, that's part of Shemoneh Esrei. But Ga'al Yisrael goes straight into Shemoneh Esrei. By the way, that's why, because we don't want to say anything in between Ga'al Yisrael and Shemoneh Esrei, we spoke about this last time, that we do not answer Amen to Ga'al Yisrael, because the Amen is a separation, and that's why people are not sure what to do. So there's 3 solutions to avoid. When you hear a bracha, you got to answer Amen. The problem is I can't answer Amen because I got to go from Ga'al Yisrael straight into Shemoneh Esrei. So there's 3 solutions to this problem. Number one, finish the bracha with the chazan. Say Gol Yisrael with the chazan. That's one, because then you can't answer amen to your own bracha. That's one option. Number two, when he's about to say Gol Yisrael, quickly start Shemoneh Esrei, like a second before. So I'm already in Shemoneh Esrei. That's option number two. And option number three is what some people do, which many poskim, Rav Shlomo Zalman wasn't a fan of this, and Rav Henkin wasn't a fan of this, and that's what a lot of chazanim do. They'll say, Baruch Hashem Leolam, and they go quiet. So you don't hear it. So now I remember in the misconception shiurim, I used to say that that's a misconception, because why are you allowed to do this? Rav Henkin was not a fan of this. Rav Henkin said, you're a chazan, you have to say things out loud, you can't just go quiet. But the reason why I'm not going to say that it's wrong is because Chabad, for 200 years, has been doing this by a different bracha, the bracha before Shema, which is also a problem of answering Amen. That's why what we do is we say Haboicher B'Ama Yisrael B'Ahava. Everyone says it. Everyone says the bracha together. Chabad, if you've ever been to Chabad shul, they say Baruch Hashem and quiet. They go quiet. So if Chabad does it for 200 years, it's obviously not going to be wrong. So that's a simple thing. So that's by Shacharis. Gol Yisrael is pretty much direct. Now if you go to Maariv, now Maariv's got a lot of stuff in between Gol Yisrael. So let me just walk you through some of them. It's just very interesting to know. It also helps when you're davening Maariv to know exactly how these things were made and why they were made. So you got Gol Yisrael in Maariv. Okay. Right after that, there are three things between Gol Yisrael and Shemoneh Esrei. So let's just walk through them. Kaddish. To answer the Kaddish, how Kaddish is there, there are Rishonim that say that Kaddish is really part of Shemoneh Esrei. Somehow. That's why Rav Moshe Feinstein used to take 3 steps back when he would be Chazan, to take 3 steps back before he would say Kaddish, because Kaddish is already a part of Shemoneh Esrei. Fine, so Kaddish we got taken care of. Right after Gol Yisrael, you have the bracha of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu, Avinu L'Shalom, Deinu Chaim Tovim L'Shalom, which by the way, especially for the matzav and what we're going through right now, read this bracha with Kavanah to protect us from the Satan, from the Malach HaMavis, from Mageifa. Why is this here? So the Gemara in Brachas says, the reason why this bracha is not a separation is because this bracha is part of Geula. It's part of redemption of Egypt. How is it part of the redemption of Egypt? So if you look in the back of the Gemara Brachas, Rabbeinu Yona's, Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah have a pirush in the back of Maseches Brachas. They say that this bracha, what does this bracha have to do with the redemption of Egypt? So they say that this bracha was actually authored by the Jewish people on the night of the Seder. That when the Jewish people at the night of the Seder in Mitzrayim, and they put the blood on the doorpost to protect them, and Hashem is going from house to house killing all the firstborns, Klal Yisrael was very scared because they didn't know what was going to be with them. I understand they thought they were going to die. So they all collectively said a tefillah to protect them from death and from Oyev, Dever, V'cherev, V'rov, Yogah. This bracha was actually said by them, so it's part of the redemption of Egypt because it was actually authored by the Jewish people to save them from Egypt. Fine. So I think Sfardim say Baruch Hashem Leolam. You guys don't say this. So Chabad, the Gra, and Sfardim, that's it. Shemoneh Esrei. There is one long tefillah that is found in the Nusach Sfardim, Nusach Ashkenaz. It's called Baruch Hashem Leolam. Now Baruch Hashem Leolam, Tosfos says, was not authored by the Gemara. It was authored by the Gaonim. It was by the Rabbanim right after the Gemara was done. There was a group of Rabbanim called the Gaonim. They wrote that tefillah. So what's the purpose of this tefillah? So if you look at it, basically that tefillah is like a condensed Shemoneh Esrei. It has 18 concepts in it. It's like a condensed Shemoneh Esrei. It serves like a dual functionality. First of all, it's that if someone needed to leave shul without davening Shemoneh Esrei, they would just say that. Also, it sort of forced everyone to slow down because they used to daven in the fields. And they were afraid, people would be afraid, they didn't want to be left alone. If everyone's like running out, you're like nervous, you don't want to be left alone in shul because it was dangerous in the middle of the fields, in the middle of nowhere. So that bracha, that tefillah sort of slowed everybody down because if you get to shul a little late, you're like, okay, they'll say Baruch Hashem Leolam, it'll slow everybody down. Chabad doesn't say it, the Vilna Gaon doesn't say it, Sfardim don't say it, and the reason why Chabad doesn't say it is because they feel it's a separation. You're not supposed to say anything between Gol Yisrael. And this is unaccounted for because this is not authored by the Gemara. This is authored by the Gaonim. So Chabad doesn't say it. So I'll tell you like this. So the poskim say that let's say you get to shul and you're running late for Maariv. You should say everything except for that. Skip that. That you can easily skip. You say it after Shemoneh Esrei, but that you could easily skip in order to catch up with the tzibbur or in order to daven Shemoneh Esrei with the tzibbur, especially knowing the fact that, I'll tell you practically, over here, for a lot of times throughout the calendar, there's going to be situations where people will ask, should we say it? Baruch Hashem Leolam is not said on Motzei Shabbos, it's not said on Chol HaMoed, it's not said on Motzei Yom Tov. So people sometimes ask, like Purim, do we say it? You look in the Neta Gavriel, some do, some don't, this minig is not to, this minig to. So my rule of thumb is that because it's something that itself is very debatable to say, whenever there's a legitimate possibility of not saying it, I'm not going to say it. That's my approach to these things. Okay, I want to run through a couple more things, and then I'm happy to take questions. Couple things. One is actually, it was actually Negeh from this past Shabbos. Someone asked me, so I wanted to clarify. I think I was outside getting, while this happened. So we had an Aufruf this past Shabbos, right? A simcha, a chassan getting married. So someone asked me, why did we say the tefillah of Av Harachamim? Now, Av Harachamim is a tefillah that's said right before Musaf. It's a very sad tefillah. It's about Jews that gave up their lives. It's not generally said on happy occasions. Whenever there's no Tachanun, we skip Av Harachamim. So someone asked me, why do we say Av Harachamim when there's a chassan here? So the answer is, according to most opinions, a chassan is defined, while we call a chassan, like before, the chassan is after the wedding. After the wedding is the chassan. I'll give you an example. There's a halacha, it's not a minhag, it's a halacha brought down in the Gemara that a chassan and a kala need a shomer. People during Shiva and a chassan and kala need a shomer, right? Need a shomer. So most people are familiar that the day of the wedding you need a shomer, and that's when you call a friend and he's got to walk with you everywhere. He's got to take you to the mikveh and he's got to sit for pictures. That's a shomer, right? That's a shomer. You'd be me. For me, if you keep distance from people, no one's going to ask you to be a shomer. But if you're a very friendly guy, everyone likes you, then you're going to be a shomer. You're going to spend your whole day. So I'll tell you like this. The truth is, the inyan of a shomer before the wedding is not a chiyuv. It's a minhag. The actual chiyuv starts after the wedding when he's a chassan. After the wedding, after the chuppah, when he is a chassan, now there's a chiyuv of shmira. You need a shomer for the week of. Now the reason why most people don't realize that is because the chassan and kala usually watch themselves. A shomer means you can't walk alone. Generally, the chassan needs one, the kala needs one. So during the week of Sheva Brachas, they generally watch each other. And people don't realize that, because they're also usually around people. But conceptually, if the chassan during the week of Sheva Brachas just says, hey, I want to go get pizza, he should go with somebody. There was an old minhag going down back to the 1650s, the 1660s. The chassan did not go to shul during the week of Sheva Brachas. Now, I think that you should. I think you should. I'm not going to tell people not to, but where does that come from? So it's a shaila. His wedding's in a couple of days. So it's a shaila of what's the inyan of why does the chassan not go to shul? If anything, the chassan during the week of Sheva Brachas should definitely go to shul. So there was two reasons brought down. So the Taz and the Chazon Ish talks about this. The Taz says perhaps the reason why is because he didn't want to exempt the tzibbur from saying Tachanun, by the way. Because we know that when a chassan is there during Sheva Brachas, there's no Tachanun being said, right? Tomorrow morning there's not going to be Tachanun here because there's going to be a bris here after davening. There's certain days where there's no Tachanun. The chassan during Sheva Brachas exempts the shul from saying Tachanun. So when there's a chassan there, everyone's excited. The Taz was so bothered that that the shul wouldn't say the holy tefillah of Tachanun. They said it's better not to go to shul during the week. That's probably not the reason. Then the Taz says another reason, because then, by the way, for that you could just always walk out of shul before Tachanun. Okay. The Taz says the other reason that the chassan didn't go to shul is because they couldn't get a shomer. The pasha couldn't get a shomer. It's hard for someone to pick you up every day. You're not going to get your kala out of bed at 6:30 in the morning, and it's hard for you. Okay, but for that, whatever that you can get a friend, or also on the way to do a mitzvah, v'chulu. But bekitzer, that's an inyan. But that's only after the chuppah, right? The minhag of Rav Soloveitchik's shita, Rav Soloveitchik's custom was, and that's why YU people do this. I'm sure you've seen this. You've been a lot of chuppahs. They put the ash under the chuppah, right? Most people put the ash on the chassan's head before they walk down the aisle. They put the ash on the head as a zeicher for the churban. Rav Soloveitchik's opinion was, and YU Rabbanim will do this, they'll put it under the chuppah. Why? Because he said you're not a chassan yet. You're only a chassan when you enter the chuppah. So you put it on the head of the chassan. You're not a chassan yet. The point is, going back over here, the reason why we said Av Harachamim in this past Shabbos was because a chassan is only a chassan after the chasana. So during Shabbos Sheva Brachas there is no Av Harachamim. But during the Aufruf, because he does not have the halachic status yet, that's what the whole Indian of a shmir is. The day of it's a minhag. It's a minhag of Sfer Chasidim, and other Chasidim have the minhag, but it's not a chiyuv. The chiyuv is dafka from after the chasana. A couple more things I just want to run through, if there's time permitted. A couple more things. One is I noticed this, that by Tachanun, Sfardim don't do this, but Ashkenazim we fall on our hands. We fall on Tachanun. That's Sfardim don't do this, but Ashkenazim, if you haven't seen it, you fall on their head. Now the reason for this is because in the times of the Gemara, at least in the early Tanoim, they used to lie down on the floor like we do on Yom Kippur. And the halacha is that when you're on a stone floor, you have to put something between your head and the floor. So they would put their sleeve down between their head and the floor. And while we don't go on the floor today, there's still the Indian, the Zeicha Laminig, that's still the concept of you put your sleeve down. Now, I just want to make this point. The Paiskim say this does not help if you're not wearing a sleeve. You can't, skin doesn't separate skin. So I just wanted to point this out because a lot of times you'll see sometimes the guy that know the halacha, they're like schlepping their short sleeves. But a lot of times you'll just see like this, put their arm against their head. It doesn't help. You have to put something in between. Couple more halachas I just want to run through, and then a couple more things, and then we'll take a break. Tomorrow there's a bris. I just want to point this out, if possible. Obviously, if it's difficult, it's difficult. But if possible, the Mishabura brings down, it's good to wear your tefillin until after the bris. Ois tefillin, ois bris, if possible, to still wear your tefillin. The Baalei bris, the moyel, the father, and the sandik have to wear tefillin. But everyone else, if possible, now it's hard sometimes because it could be 10, 15 minutes, but ideally you should still wear your tefillin until after the ceremony of the bris. A couple more things I just wanted to point out. 2 or 3. Okay, one is a little bit longer, but I'll just say kids. We spoke about this on Friday night. Let's say you have a situation where you need to turn the light off or on in your house. Okay, so there's a concept that under certain circumstances you could ask someone who's not Jewish to turn it on or turn it off. Now, I'm not getting involved in those laws. Those are a whole shiur in and of itself. But sometimes people will say, and this is a big misconception, I have a 4-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son. I'll hold them up. Like I'll take a 2-year-old, I'll hold them up, and I'll be like, Daddy doesn't want the light on. Okay, now that's very much not allowed. That's very much not allowed. There's a special iser d'oraisa, a biblical prohibition, as we say during Kiddush, ata uvincha uvitecha, that by Shabbos, in addition to you not doing something, you're not allowed to have your child do it for you. So, if your child is old enough to know that you want this being done, and they do it for you, it is a biblical prohibition. So where does it come from? There's one application. If you have an infant that has no idea what's going on, I'm talking like a 4-month-old baby, and you hold them up by the light, and they're just flinging their arms, okay, then if it's allowed, I'm not saying you could do it with the light on, but you could do it to turn the light off, because then you're not benefiting from it. That's where it might be permissible to do that. So people took that and they're like, well, if a 5-month-old baby can do it, what's the difference in the laws of like children between 5 and 4 years? The answer is, in this case, a lot. Because once the kid is 3 years old, he knows that daddy wants this, then that's a biblical prohibition. When they're 4 or 5 months, they have no idea what's going on, then they're just flinging their arms. That is potentially, under certain circumstances, permitted. If you look in Sin Shim Mem Gimel in the Shulchan Aruch and Yaakov Yosef, they have a whole arichas, but I just want to point that out.
Same thing with the dog or something?
Yeah, I guess conceptually, you're holding up your dog and it's flinging your head. I guess so. Again, it's not always permitted. You have to not be able to benefit from it. It's more when turning the light off. But my point is just, I'm not saying it's allowed. I'm just saying that it's definitely not allowed when they're 3 or 4. Just 2 more things I just wanted to point out. Actually, one more thing along with this. No, two. This I could ask. It's so not a get during the winter, but during the summer I get asked this, and if for some reason someone asked me today, and I just want to mention, if you find yourself like upstate, it's so not relevant now, but I'll just mention it's on a recording. If you're upstate and there's no mikveh to bring keli mikveh, I'm not talking people mikveh, like a keli mikveh, can I just dip it in the river? So I just want to point this out. You cannot, after it rains, you have to give it a few days after it rains. Now the reason is for the laws of mikveh of kelim, this is true for people also, but for kelim specifically, you could either do rainwater that's settled or flowing river water. So a river is flowing river water. That's good. The problem is after a heavy rain where the river swelled, we're afraid that you're actually dipping it in the flowing rainwater, which is not okay. So you cannot go to the river unless, if it's rained the last couple of days, you got to give it a couple of days to let anyone who's been like upstate or like when we were in New Hampshire, if it rains a lot, you literally see the river goes up. You'd have to let it settle back to its natural height. Then it's okay. Just wanted to point that out. And the last halacha I want to mention, I was by the cemetery on Sunday. What day is it? Oh my gosh. crazy. Sunday, I went to the oil, and I went to other kfarim. We went to some kfarim. So afterwards, that night, I went to the oil, and I was talking to someone, and he asked me, how come that when you go to older cemeteries, the letters stick out, but in the more modern cemeteries and the rabbonim, it's all sunken in. So the reason is very simple. The Gemara in Hari, it's a Gemara. The Gemara in Hari says that one of the things that cause you to forget your learning, Kabbalistically, is reading tombstones. Do not read tombstones. The Gemara says if you read your tombstones, it causes you to forget your learning. Okay, but it says the Arizal, that's only true if the letters stick out. If the letters are sunken, there's no problem. So reading letters that are sticking out causes you to forget your learning. Because of this, it used to be they weren't particular about it. But because of this, over the last 80, 90 years, they stopped making tombstones in the more Orthodox world. They stopped making tombstones that stick out. If you go to cemeteries, 1800s, they're all sticking out. 1930s, 1940s, they all started being sinking in to avoid this concern of this Arizal. Also, one more point. Again, I don't understand why. This is Kabbalistic. You got to chalk this up to this is a thing. If you don't read tombstones where they're sticking out. I will say this. A lot of times you'll go to cemeteries. It's a minig of Klal Yisrael for the last couple hundred years to put rocks on a tombstone. Now, why? I'll tell you why in a second. But listen, I was once in a store, in a Judaica store in Boca, where they were selling rocks from Israel to put on tombstones. Okay, whatever. That's just ridiculous. All rocks will do. It doesn't have to be rocks from Israel. So what's the Indian of putting rocks on a tombstone? So the Ber Heitev brings down, very simply put, you want to show the person that's buried there that people went to visit them. It's a covet to show that he's cared for. So in the non-Jewish world, they put flowers. The problem with flowers is they rot. So we put rocks. It shows you like, oh, look how many people are. And by the way, it works when you're in a cemetery. You don't see like, wow, tremendous rock. Oh, it must be a big tzaddik, right? Why else do people go there? That's one reason. The Arizal brings down that one of the ways to counter this bad taking away your memory loss thing from tombstones that stick out is if you put a rock on it, it removes the potency. So that would be another reason to put a rock. But because of this, B'Kitzer Hamaisa, because of this, the minig of Klal Yisrael was to stop making tombstones that were sticking out, and we made tombstones that would sunk in order to avoid this concern.